Hey, what's up, man?
How you doing, buddy?
Pretty good, man.
Good.
So, pretty much this is the 80th edition of the Rock Show,
Right.
81st edition of the Rock Show.
81st episode.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we got a countdown to 100, 19 more episodes.
Yep. We're gonna do something special for 100. I'm not sure yet, but we'll do something special.
Let me slide over and grab a Diet Coke while you introduce it. Today we got a special band that we talking about. We talk
Yeah.
about
Today we're gonna be talking about the band Bauhaus. Okay, they're pretty much the first goth band. They pretty much invented the genre, in my opinion. Um, and they have a very interesting history. They weren't around for all that long early on, but they made quite a big splash in what they did.
But they had, you know what's funny about them? They left and they came back. They broke up
Yeah.
and came back.
Yes, they did. They were together for about 5 years, and then broke up for about 15 years. But in that 15 years, a whole genre kind of developed out of what they had done.
I thought that was amazing. And remember we actually saw Peter Murphy last year, right? Was it about
Yeah,
last year?
yeah. Trying to remember when that was. It was rescheduled. It was in the fall last year. We saw him. I think October or November. Um, he had a heart attack over the summer, and I actually no. Was it this year? Was it in January we saw him?
Yeah,
I
January, I
think it was
think.
January. Yeah, he had a heart attack last summer and had to turn down a lot of gigs. He had to reschedule. He had like a residency at La Poisson Rouge down near Bleecker Street on the west side, and once he rescheduled those shows, he did a whole bunch of them in a row. Remember?
He did a lot, yeah. He did
Yeah.
he pretty much did he did like a David Bowie tribute.
Yeah. Well, the night that we went, it was the David Bowie tribute night, and he's known as a huge Bowie fan, and always does Bowie songs well. So I was excited to see that. That was really good that night.
Yeah, that was good. It was a packed house too, if you
Oh yeah.
remember.
Oh yeah, it was very packed. I remember that.
What was the opening band that day? He had like an opening band, right?
I don't I don't think so. I didn't see an opening band. I had gotten there. He was just about to go on. I remember I think he came out with the first song might have been Rebel Rebel,
Yeah.
something like that. And I know you showed up a few minutes after me.
Yeah,
But
I saw when I got there, the first song I was in was Rebel Rebel. Yeah.
yeah, I think he had just started it. So it's cool. So anyway, Bauhaus has an interesting history. We'll just dive right in here. They started in Northampton, England. That's where they're from, in 1978. The interesting thing too about Bauhaus is the four guys in the band have always been in the band. No changes, no lineup changes. Nobody got kicked out and replaced. It's always just been Daniel Ash on guitar and saxophone, Peter Murphy on vocals, Kevin Haskins on drums, and his brother David J. Haskins on bass. So you don't see that too much. There's usually some kind of lineup change, but they
Yeah, always like some kind of lineup change, or people, people quit, or people they get married, or they do something that changes the whole lineup and the
yeah
chemistry.
yeah. So Daniel Ash and David J. and Kevin Haskins were performing in a bunch of different bands in that area in Northampton. And one of the longer lived bands that they had been involved with was a band called The Craze. Now, Daniel Ash knew Peter Murphy from school, and he wanted him to join the band because he had a great kind of look to him. And Murphy had no musical experience whatsoever. He never was in a band, he never sang, nothing like that. And he was basically a factory guy. He was working at a printing factory at the time.
But you
But
know
he
what?
said,
He has a great voice.
"Oh yeah, he does." He was kind of like this hidden talent that he had. I guess he didn't even realize he had it. But
So, Mike, let me ask you. So, when they first started, they were known as Bauhaus 1919.
yeah, that was the original name of the band, and that comes from. Do you know what that comes from? The art scene in the
Yeah, the
20s.
art scene. That was like the artist Oscar, whatever,
Yeah,
right?
I
The
mean
artist.
it comes from the the art movement in Germany out of a
Yeah,
college in Germany called Bauhaus, the
yeah.
Bauhaus College, and it's interesting stuff. I've kind of like researched it over the years. It's kind of interesting. It's all part of that German expressionist movement, like that kind of gave us some great movies, like The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, stuff like that, like that style, Metropolis, that type of look came out of the Bauhaus movement as well. It's very kind of like stark, a lot of black and white kind of, colors, opposites, kind of like pointing off each other. And it's an interest. It was a very interesting scene, very kind of like groundbreaking in the art world. And I guess they were interested in it, so they wanted to call themselves Bauhaus 1919. That actually was, I think David J had actually suggested that.
But they even use the same artwork from the.
Yeah, they took their logo is the same logo as the Bauhaus movement.
Yeah.
Yeah, they use the same thing. Um, Originally, David J wasn't going to be part of this new band that Ash wanted to put together, but they would eventually ask him to join the band, and he came up with the name Bauhaus 1919. Now, he also had some obligations in a different band that he gave up to join Bauhaus. He was supposed to be playing some American air bases with another band that really wasn't going anywhere, so he just, got out of that and threw everything into Bauhaus. Their first gig would be at the Cromwell Pub in Wellingborough on New Year's Eve, 1978. That would be their very first gig. The band right away had you could tell they were different. They had a dark look to them, okay, and a dark sound that was not like anything in that area, nothing anybody in Northampton had ever seen. What they did early on, because they were so visual in their performances, is before they had a record contract, anything like that, they decided to videotape an early gig, a whole gig from beginning to end, and shop that to the record companies. Okay, instead of having a demo, they had a video, which was kind of unique at the time. The only problem was a lot of record companies didn't have like a VCR in their office to check it out, so they ended up making a demo anyway.
And it turned out to be good.
Yeah, well, sure. Okay, now,
Mike, so I just want to get this clear because David J was not invited, right? But they had a guy named
originally not.
they had a guy named Chris Barber, right?
Yeah, briefly. Everything came out of that band called The Craze.
Yeah.
Okay, and what was happening was The Craze was just going to kind of change into this Bauhaus. They were adding Peter Murphy. They were tinkering with the lineup, and just that, The Craze was going to be no more. For some reason, David J, I'm not sure why he wasn't asked originally.
I think Ash just wanted to control it because David J got a weird thing that he takes over, and I think Ash was like, "Nah, this is my band, this is my thing. I want to control it with him." I think that's the only reason.
I think it was because David J and Kevin were brothers.
Yeah.
Okay, so you kind of had that two brothers against one dude kind of thing, so maybe that was the dynamic he wanted to avoid. But I think this, the bass player they had just wasn't going to work out, so they had to ask David back.
Yeah.
He's a good bass player. They're all good musicians.
Do you think that was better, that choice than Chris Barber?
Well, Chris Barber went into nowhere. Okay, I don't think that name pops up anymore in history, as far as I know. They had experience with David J. It just was like you say, maybe Ash wanted to try to control things a little bit and felt that having the two brothers was not a good idea for him. But in the end, he had to give in because they just needed his performance. They needed his expertise on bass.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes when you're putting a band together, you may not even like the guy, but he's so damn good, you want him in the band, I don't know if that was true in this case, but that does happen in bands. Sometimes you have guys that just don't like each other, but they make it work.
Yeah.
So anyway, they decided to make a demo, okay? and they would enter Beck Studios in Wellingsboro to record it. Now, 5 tracks were done right away, and one would be their first, end up being their first single, and that was the song "Bela Lugosi's Dead."
That's a great song.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, like that's the signature tune
Yeah,
to Bauhaus. That's the first song I ever heard from them.
yeah.
And they ended up putting it out on a label called Small Wonder Records in August of '79. And at that point, they dropped the 1919 part of their name.
Okay,
And
so they
when they pressed those records, it just was Bauhaus. It didn't say 1919. They never released anything as Bauhaus 1919.
I think that they need it. That just being Bauhaus is good enough, you know.
Yeah, I think the 19 was like a little too much, probably. You know, too much of a distraction. Bauhaus sounds good by itself. Now, the other 4 songs on the demo, because it was a 5-song demo, was a song called Boys, a song called Bite My Hip, a song called Some Faces, and a song that was almost, because they experimented with some different sounds. This song is almost ska in the way it
Yeah,
sounds.
because they experimented with a little bit of psychedelic sky and gram rock.
Yeah, well, I mean, they had all different influences. The song I'm talking about is a song called Harry, and
Harry.
it's about Debbie Harry from Blondie. The song is about her, and it's a very ska sounding song. That was eventually released, I think, on the B side of "A Kick in the Eye,"
Wow.
the song "A Kick in the Eye." So it wasn't released for a few years, but it's a good tune. You can get it on compilations and stuff like that. Now, the single "Bela Lugosi's Dead" started getting interest. Okay, DJ John Peel played it on his radio show, and he asked the band to come on and record a live session. And that would happen and be broadcasted on January 3rd, 1980.
And this
Now,
guy John Pierce, he was a big BBC guy, right? He was like,
yeah, I mean, he's come up in a lot of our shows. We've mentioned him many times. Bands, when they came on the John Peel show, that could make or break you. If he liked you, okay, he played you on his show, you were going to be famous. That's how powerful he was in
because
that
he
business
loved
at the time.
T Rex, right? That's why he
Yeah,
was
I
one of
mean,
those.
but that was 10 years earlier. I mean, he'd been around.
Wow.
Okay, yeah. When he was in love with T Rex, which was actually he really loved Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're talking 68, 69,
Wow.
and this is already 1980. So he'd been around.
And the guy's just still going around playing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he had his radio show, and it was well respected, and the ratings were great. And you can look up a lot of bands from England from the '70s, and many of them, especially the really good ones, like all have John Peel recordings
Wow.
where they would be, even bands that maybe didn't go far. Like one that comes to mind is the Slits. Great
Okay.
band, great female band. They have a fantastic performance on John Peel. It's like their best live shit.
Wow.
I love that album. Now, Bela Lugosi's Dead, like I said, was starting to get a lot of notice. And it really is, when you listen to it, it's the first Gothic song, like really in that genre, that they didn't even know what they were doing. They didn't realize they didn't go out to make a Gothic
Yeah,
song.
they pretty much called him the pioneers of goth music.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, one band that kind of took it a little bit to the goth is the Damned. Remember we did the show on the Damned?
Yeah.
Okay, but that was like a few years later. They had probably, I think they were listening to Bauhaus closely, okay, and went in that direction, probably because of Bauhaus. But or to try to do something similar. But Bela Lugosi's Dead. I mean, I remember the first time I heard that was in the movie The Hunger. We'll talk about that later. Do you remember that movie, the vampire flick?
Yeah, that was a great movie.
Yeah, Susan Sarandon, Catherine
Yeah.
Deneuve, all that, right? But David Bowie's in it in the beginning,
Yeah.
and in the opening credits, you see Peter Murphy, singing Bela Lugosi's Dead, and I remember hearing that. I guess it was when that movie came out, like 82, 83, being like, "What is that?" It just was like such a different. I mean, I was listening to stuff like Susie and the Banshees and things, and that they kind of were. Susie and the Banshees were definitely uh, proto gothic, like to say proto punk like before, but like proto gothic. Like they kind of had some songs that definitely went into that. But Bauhaus took it, with that like 9-minute song "Bela Lugosi's Dead." They took it into something totally different.
Yeah, that's amazing. That it was a 9-minute song, man.
Yeah, yeah, and they released it as a single. Not
That's
too many people
wild.
do that. Now through 1980, they would release two more singles, and it was for the 4AD label. One song was called "Dark Entries," and another one was called "Terror Couple Kill Colonel." Okay, and it was released in January and June of 1980. Those two singles. Now, all of that year of 1980, they were kind of busy working on their first LP, and it was called "In the Flat Field," which would come out be released on November 3rd, 1980. Now, that album, in my opinion, is really like the first goth record.
Yeah.
Okay, again, like Susie and the Banshees had touched on similar style. Joy Division is another band, okay, that had like a dark, atmospheric sound to their music. Um, but Bauhaus, the album "In the Flat Field," took it to a different level, and it got mixed reviews off the bat. New Musical Express and Trouser Press gave it like lukewarm reviews. I mean, to me, it's classic. I mean, when I listen to that album, there's so many great goth songs on there, like "Double Dare," the title track "In the Flat Field," "A God in an Alcove," "Stigmata," "Marta." These are all like goth classics, and they kind of laid the groundwork for a lot of bands that would come in the '80s. Bands like
The Cure.
The Cure, absolutely, but also other stuff like Ministry. Okay, Ministry, Skinny Puppy, Sisters of Mercy.
You know what about Ministry is one of those bands that they change with every album.
Yeah, but they always had that, especially the early stuff. They always
Yeah,
had
oh yeah.
that darkness to them, even though they were kind of like an industrial sound. But
Definitely industrial, yeah.
yeah, I mean, many people cite Bauhaus as an influence. I mean, even one guy that you wouldn't think, like Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses, says Bauhaus is one of his favorite bands.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's just this kind of like you got to, for me, this kind of music I got to be in the mood for, okay? Because it's like you got to really just it's good with headphones. Just lie there, smoke a joint, put a headphones on, and lay back and listen to this. It's when it came out, I think the critics really didn't know what to think of it because there's a lot of yelling. Murphy's like screaming a lot and kind of almost like in pain, kind of, but it was a brand new kind of sound. I mean, not too many bands can be groundbreaking, and I think Bauhaus was. Now, Murphy had a Bowie sound-alike voice sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay, and in December of 1980, um, he had like acknowledged his Bowie influence and all that. But another band that they were very influenced by was T-Rex. You just mentioned them.
Yep.
And in December 1980, they released as a single the cover of T-Rex's Telegram Sand. Okay, and that was, T-Rex was a big influence on a lot of British bands, and definitely Bauhaus was one that was influenced.
Yeah, they
So
also released David Bowie Ziggy Stardust too.
that would be later on. And it would be a huge hit for them, and we'll get into that. Their version of Ziggy Stardust rivals the original. It really
Yeah,
is.
it was really fucking good.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
really good.
let me ask you a question. What do you think of them? Like, were they like once they were like the album was? Did they have commercial success right off the back, or did they struggle?
Well, In the Flat Field did okay. It didn't do it. I think it cracked the top 200. Not in the states. Not it. They didn't really have. They did go to the states early on. I think the first time they went might have been about 79.
Okay.
Okay, or 80 possibly. Might have been the first year they came to the States, and then they went. I think it was 80, actually, if I remember right. And then they went like once a year pretty much until 83. So they, they didn't play many gigs in the States. They just did a handful in those early years. The funny thing with them is, after they broke up in 83, the guys went on to different things and they made more money and had more success away from Bauhaus.
Yeah.
Because Daniel Ash and David J and David Haskins, they started loving Rockets.
That's a great band.
That was yeah. I liked quite a few songs by them. And Peter Murphy had his own career. He had a couple albums did really well. He had that I think in '89 that album Deep that MTV played the shit out of. That song Cut You Up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he had like blonde hair then. He kind of looked like Bowie.
Yeah.
But we're jumping ahead here because the label 4AD, after they had put out In the Flatfield, started having money problems. And their parent company was called Beggar's Banquet Records. And they ended up kind of like moving over to the parent company because 4AD had to fold up. And right around that time, they would release the single Kick in the Eye, which is a great tune.
That is a great fucking song.
That was one of their first big hits. It got to number 59. And then the following single was called The Passion of Lovers. And that would get to number 56 in July of 81.
So slowly they were like moving up. They're creeping up.
Slowly. And they began working in early 81 on their second album, the one called Mask. And on this one, they decided to be much more experimental. Like tracks like Kick in the Eye, it has almost like a funk rhythm to it.
Yeah.
And it's got some saxophone. Daniel Ash is playing sax. They added keyboards, okay? There's a track called Dancing and In Fear of Fear that had keyboards on it. That was the first time they really used that. The album Mask came out in October of 81. And it was actually, even though it was experimental and they were kind of tinkering with their sound, it was actually received very well by the critics. And a lot of the critics that kind of like were lukewarm to them with the first album really liked this second album. So they were moving up, and the critics were starting to take notice. Trouser Press said the album was way better than their first album.
So they had like a little bit of weird freshman kind of jinx, and then as a sophomore they did good.
Yeah, well, they didn't have the sophomore jinx. Okay, usually the sophomore jinx is when your first album does great and your second album doesn't.
No, they had the freshman jinx.
I guess. But the band decided to do something interesting. What they did to promote this album was they shot a video for the title track Mask. And that was a big thing at the time. Not too many people were making videos. In July of 82, they would release their seventh single, the song called Spirit. And it was produced by a guy named Hugh Jones. And I think that this song Spirit was an attempt to kind of be a little commercial.
Yeah, definitely commercial.
Yeah, I mean, Hugh Jones would end up being involved with like Echo and the Bunnymen and got bands like that in the early 80s. And I think he had the kind of experience that they thought they would have a hit with this. Now, the song only made it to number 42. So it didn't really make a big hit for them. But the band actually was really displeased with the whole song in general, the way it came out. So when they released it as a single, it if you buy the album, okay, that they were working on, the third album called The Sky's Gone Out, the version of Spirit is way different than the single version. So it has a totally kind of different, they re-recorded it. They just didn't like
the original version.
The original version, the single version of it. They liked the album version of it. And that album would come out, their third album, The Sky's Gone Out, would come out later in 82. But after that Spirit single bombed, they did have a top 20 hit, and that's with the cover of David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust, which we just mentioned before. Yeah. This was their first top 20 hit, and it was recorded in a session with the BBC. Okay, that's how they did it. It wasn't on the album or anything like that. Now, the song will get to number 15, and it would give the band an appearance on Top of the Pops, because anything that was top 40 will get you an appearance on Top of the Pops. That was the first time they were ever on that show. The thing too is that the single helped push the album, so the album actually got to number 4, and that was their biggest hit.
That was definitely a big hit, and it was
Yeah.
a remake, you know.
Well, the one song was a remake, but it was all new music. This was the year also, 82, that they made an appearance in the film The Hunger.
Yeah.
Okay, like I mentioned before. Now, what's interesting is, and it kind of like created a problem in the band, is the band was brought in to perform. It's a scene in a club, okay, and you see Bowie in the club with Catherine Deneuve. Susan Sarandon's not there yet; she's not introduced until a little bit later. But you see Catherine Deneuve, and you see Bowie in the club, and you see these like goth people, and they're kind of like dancing around, and you know that something's up with Deneuve. There's you could just tell like there's something evil about her. Bowie looks great. He's just got like sunglasses on in the scene. But what was supposed to happen was the band was supposed to be shown, the whole band, okay, in the movie at the opening credits. But when the movie was cut and released, they only showed Peter Murphy.
Yeah, the final cut, there was only Peter. They focused on Peter Murphy.
Yeah, they focus on Peter Murphy a bunch of times in that scene. And I think it kind of created a problem in the band. I think what they were noticing is that Murphy's getting way too much attention. Now, there was another thing going on in England at the time that was attracting attention to Murphy. Now, do you remember Maxell cassettes?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember they had that advertising campaign, the commercial
With
with the guy in the chair?
Yeah.
And it looks like he's getting blown away by the music. His hair is going all the way
Yeah.
back. Okay, now in America, they had a model actor. I don't know who he is. But in England, they used Peter Murphy.
Wow.
Peter Murphy was the blown away guy. That's what they call him. Okay.
The blown away guy.
The blown away guy. And he made a lot of money with that. And I think, that created the problem in the band, So in October of 82, The Sky's Gone Out was released, but it was somewhat experimental too, okay? And it had a cover of the Brian Eno song Third Uncle, and the new recording of Spirit was on there, and they kind of dabbled a couple of songs with reggae and ska, but not, just touching on it. It wasn't really like a straight up reggae song or anything like that. But the music was still considered dark. One song on there that I always loved was called "Swing the Heartache." That's a really good song on that album. In early '83, Peter Murphy got sick. Okay, he was stricken with pneumonia, and the rest of the band kind of had to take a big hand in writing and recording the Bauhaus fourth album called "Burning from the Inside."
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, this would be kind of a problem in the band because Daniel Ash and David J started the recording without Murphy, and I think that pissed them off. They couldn't wait to record, and they actually sing lead on a couple of the songs, so that created further rifts in the band. And the track on there that I love is called "She's in Parties," okay, and that was released as a single in April of '83. And that would be their last single released commercially. And it would get to number 26, and it would earn them another appearance on Top of the Pops. So once again, they're on Top of the Pops. They're doing well. In July of that year, of '83, Burning from the Inside would be released, and the band would go on an international tour. They would be playing Europe and the Far East.
They went to Japan, right?
Yeah, I believe they went to Japan. Probably Bangkok, Thailand, like that stuff. Okay, that's usually the way they do it. Remember the Hanoi Rock Show?
Yeah.
All right, so
it's amazing how that show is doing so good right now. How many people like him?
The Hanoi Rock Show did do very well.
It does very well.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
And the whites, the fucking Cheap Trick too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've done some good ones, man. It's just hit or miss.
Yeah.
So when they did the Far East tour, they kind of was starting to realize that the band's not working anymore. It was beginning to fall apart. They announced that. Well, they announced to themselves. They didn't make it public, but they decided that on July 5th, 1983, they would play their last show, and that was at the Hammersmith Palais in London. And fans were kind of tipped off that you got to go to this show. They didn't say they were breaking up, but they were like, don't miss these shows. There was actually two in a row. And after a long encore on the last night, David J left the stage. They had done some early songs as the encore, and David J left the stage saying the words "Rest in peace."
Wow. Imagine that.
Yeah, and actually, the album hadn't actually come out yet. It was released the following week and got to number 13. So that was a successful album as well. They would also release a single just for their fans in a fan club called Sanity Assassins, and that was just for members of their fan club. And then that would be the original incarnation. Okay, and they would spend the next 15 years in solo careers. Okay, Love and Rockets, like I mentioned, Peter Murphy, Daniel Ash, I believe around, I want to say 89 or 90, he had that big hit in America, So Alive. Remember that song?
Do remember that song.
Yeah, that was like his biggest hit. That was after Love and Rockets actually had broken up. Love and Rockets I like. They had that version of Ball of Confusion,
Yeah.
and No New Tale to Tell. That was another one. Very different than Bauhaus. More
Yeah.
upbeat.
I think
It
Love and
was.
Rock is a place that it's a band that we might touch with a compilation of a bunch of other bands because
Yeah,
they were a very interesting history. Love and
yeah.
Rocket.
They were, and they. What I always find interesting with them is if you watch their videos, and they made very good videos on MTV. Um, a lot of times they wear all white, and the stage is white, and everything is bright colors, and it's exactly the opposite of Bauhaus.
Yes,
I
it's
mean,
just incredible how the
and
opposite is.
they really like they wear like white hats or white pants or something or a shirt, and it's like you look at them and you go, well, they're totally opposite of what they just had done for the last 5 years, you know.
Mike,
But
you want to hear why? Because if you had the devil and the angel on one show, there would be Bauhaus. On the other show, there would be Love and Rocket.
that's true. That's true. The only Murphy kind of stayed in that genre because he was the voice.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if you'd really call it goth. It was kind of like like what the Cure was doing. Like he got into that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like that album. I think it was called Deep from 1989 with the song "Cut You Up," and there was one other one that was a minor hit. Name escapes me at the moment, but like I remember seeing that on MTV and being like, well, it's not bad. Okay, he had like a lot of strings and violins in that song and everything, and
Yeah.
it was kind of like a depressing kind of song. But that's what he did. That's the kind of shit he was doing. Now, David J actually recorded a couple of solo albums in '84 and '85, and one interesting thing that he did is he recorded with the comic book writer Alan Moore, the guy who did Watchmen.
Yeah.
And he was in a short-lived band with him called the Sinister Ducks. I never knew Alan Moore was in a band.
I did not know that either.
Yeah, I never knew that. I'd like to hear what it sounds like. The Sinister Ducks.
Sinister Duck.
Yeah, I don't know if they ever recorded anything. I have to check it out. But in '85, Daniel Ash and David J and Kevin Haskins actually were trying to put Bauhaus back together. So that was 2 years after they had broken up.
Yeah.
And Peter Murphy was invited down with the other three to the studio to do a rehearsal and see how it would come together. But Murphy didn't show up. Okay, he stiffed them. All right. And these guys decided to just jam, and they kind of they liked the chemistry so much that's how Love and Rockets got started.
Wow.
Okay, so that was in 1985, and they were like, way more commercially successful than Bauhaus was. But okay, after 15 years and a whole goth scene with so many bands that would be influenced by them
Dude,
by
it's
98.
amazing. Like from Typo Negative to like even rock band. Like there's a
Marilyn
bunch of
Manson.
dude. They would even talk about Nine Inch Nails. You talk about all
Yeah.
these bands that it's like fascinating how many people they influence.
Yeah, I mean, think about the sound of Nine Inch Nails. Think about the sound of Ministry, or even bands like Marilyn Manson.
Oh, it's
Okay.
definitely a lot like the
Yeah,
original Bauhaus.
yeah, definitely they were listening to that. Okay. Typo Negative, absolutely, without a doubt. Um, Now they would reunite in 1998. They had, excuse me, they had a song called "The Dogs of Vapor." Okay, and it would release a live album also on that reunion called Gotham. All
Yeah,
right, so
but that song, the Dog of Vapor, was in a very interesting movie.
yes, and which was
Heavy Metal 2000.
Heavy Metal 2000. That's
Which
right.
I loved. I watched that. I remember that song on the thing. I love the original Heavy Metal, but when that Heavy Metal 2000 came on, holy shit! I thought that was
Yeah,
great.
I only saw that once. I have to check that out again.
It's
I
a good,
remember when.
it's a good
Yeah,
movie. It's like a
yeah,
great tribute to the original Heavy Metal because it's pretty much based on the Heavy Metal comic book,
yeah.
and it was just fantastic. Like if you like
Well,
that whole rock genre with cartoon and they're like cursing, that's fucking. It's
yeah.
amazing.
No, I mean the first Heavy Metal movie's classic. They made a few of them in the '80s. It was American pop, heavy metal. A lot of those are good. In 2005, now 7 years later, they would reunite again. Okay, and they were playing what was called the Coachella Festival in California. And what was interesting, I mean, everybody wants to hear Bela Lugosi's "Dead." So what they did on that tour is when they played it live, it would be the first song that they would do. Okay, so right away they were getting that song out of the way. But Peter Murphy would get lowered upside down.
Yeah, like a vampire.
Onto the stage like a vampire. Yep, I know. He is a vampire.
Yeah, I thought that was incredible, man.
Yep. Now I saw them in '98. That was the only time I ever saw them. It was over at Hammerstein Ballroom,
Yeah,
and they didn't lower him onto the stage, but he had such a presence. Okay, it was amazing. I think they did 2 or 3 nights at Hammerstein.
yeah, we were going to see them in Radio
Yeah,
City.
yeah, I know. And the whole COVID thing blew that apart. But we still got tickets, and then, I was on their website, and there was a little bit about them saying that they're trying to figure out how they're going to do this in 2021. So we'll see them. We got the tickets.
Oh, so they're going to reschedule for 2021?
Yeah, but they just don't know when or how they're doing it.
That's not a bad thing.
No, I mean they didn't refund my money. The tickets are still there. They're just going to reschedule. So many bands now have had to do that because of the coronavirus.
Dude, you know how crazy that is? How many bands are going to have to redo their shows and everything?
Yeah. Think about how much money that's lost.
Dude, imagine that big Guns N' Roses tour.
Well, I don't know if you heard, but in England,
yeah,
the British government is going to bail out the music industry.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and the venue industry also. Okay, because venues have been hit so hard that they may have to close. And same in America, but there's no talk yet of that happening here. Something's going to have to be done because some of these places, they've been boarded up for months. How are they going to stay in business? Especially if the bands can't come here to play. So it's a scary thing right now. I mean, bands have been trying to make up for it by doing little streaming concerts online and stuff like that. But that's, what are you going to charge? $10, $20? It's
yeah,
not
you
going
can't charge much for streaming something,
No. And some bands have been doing, quite a bit, but you're not going to make any real money with that. That's just to keep everybody happy. You got to get out there and talk.
You know who always streamed their show every time was Fish, believe it or not.
Yeah, well, they suck.
No, but they got They got so
Yeah.
many fans that they
No,
stream the
I know
show.
they're big. They're big, and
Even in Pink, you want to hear something funny? Pink will play those shows.
really.
Yeah, Pink. If they're fucking in Pink, they will do nights where they will play the freaking Fish concert. They had the live stream.
Oh, okay, okay. Fish reminds me of like the Grateful Dead of today. Don't they play for like 3 fucking hours?
Oh, they play for three. Some of their
Yeah,
songs can be everything between.
20 minutes
Yeah,
long and stuff.
it's
Yeah,
amazing.
I can't deal with that, man. I go crazy at a show like that. But in 2008, now they would come out with their first new studio album since '83, so it was 25 years, and it was called "Go Away White." All
Yeah,
right, and the album was recorded basically very simply in one room, and most of the first takes were used as the final cuts, and that's their last studio album. Now something had happened in that room, and they got into a fight, and that album almost didn't come out, and they were going to tour behind it, but the whole thing fell apart. All right, and they announced again that they were breaking up again. So no one quite knows exactly what happened. I think it had something to do with Murphy and David J, possibly, but that was in 2008. Now, since then, there really hasn't been much talk until 2019. So 11 years went by. Peter Murphy would occasionally come around, do some live shows. I remember, hearing about it. Daniel Ash and David J and David Haskins, as far as I know, they weren't doing much. If they were, it might have been over in England.
yeah,
But in 2019, after 11 years, they would play the 5,000 seat Hollywood Palladium. Okay. And it sold out right away. They added 2 more shows by December of that year, 2019. And Bauhaus is back. Okay.
yeah,
Announced that they were going to do a bunch of shows. And unfortunately, the coronavirus, blew that open. Now, Tristan from the Undead, bass player from the Undead and bass player from Antidote, he actually went to one of those shows in Hollywood.
Oh yeah, wow.
And he said it was fucking great. He's originally from California, so he goes back and forth a lot between here and California, and he's got a kid out there. And he told me, he said they were fucking fantastic. I mean, I was concerned about his voice, and we had tickets for the Peter Murphy show at Le Poisson Rouge, and I remember asking him, like, how's his voice? He says it's great. Okay, so I was, they did all the songs that you wanted to hear, and I was really looking forward to that Bauhaus show. But hopefully we get to see them.
Yeah, if they make it to next year.
Yeah. Now, I mean, their legacy, and we talked about this a little bit, but I'll bring it up again. Is so many bands like Typo Negative, Marilyn Manson, Skinny Puppy, even bands like Christian Death or Celtic Frost. Okay, they all claim Bauhaus as an influence. Jane's Addiction claims it. Soundgarden, the Flaming Lips. All right, and actually, you're a comic book guy, so do you remember the Neil Gaiman series, The Sandman?
Oh, I love the Sandman. That was
Okay,
great.
remember the character Dream?
Yeah.
That's based off of Peter Murphy.
Wow, I didn't know that, but I
Yeah,
can see it.
look at his face.
Yeah,
So,
I can see it now when you
yeah,
think about it. Because they
yeah,
had
yeah.
that Sand. Have you ever seen the Sandman movie? Was a little bit weird.
It was weird. I did see it one time. Yeah, it is a weird movie. So that's all I got for you today with this.
Wow, that's a lot of information, man. So Mike, what do you think? You think by 2021 they reunite to do the tour? You think we might see an album come out of this?
Maybe a live album. I'm not sure about a studio album.
You don't think a studio album?
Maybe they've taken this time off to work on something. Okay, they've been very quiet. I've been checking on them every couple of weeks, and there really hasn't been any news. So I'm not sure. They may not want to sit down and write. they may want to just, record a live album and hope that sells. I think they're doing this for the fans and for themselves. It's not really about making a lot of money.
So they're just doing it for the love of the music and stuff.
Right. I mean, here's a band that really from 78 to 83, that was their prime. So a lot of people really didn't get to see them, and they didn't play America that much back in those days. So, the American audience, when they announced like the Hollywood shows, it sold out right away. Even Radio City, when they announced it, I was buying the tickets, and 3/4 of Radio City was sold out in, I want to say, an hour or two. And they did sell out. And that was just a one night. They only had one night planned for that show.
That's crazy, and they sold out.
Yeah. I mean, once all this is over, I think a lot of bands will be back out. They have to. They have to.
Wow. Yeah, so let's see. Hopefully we get to see them next year, man.
Yeah. 2021, a lot of bands are coming back in 2021. I've been hearing all the dates for different bands. They all say 2021.
Wow. So you think by 2021 we'll definitely have be able to sit in a place? Because even what's crazy, even Broadway got canceled to January of 2021 too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's crazy. If we don't have that's a whole other show we could do about the coronavirus.
Yeah, that's we're gonna have to do a Rockshow exclusive of how the coronavirus affected the music industry in 2020, man. Because everything, dude. Think about how bad it is. It affected the movie industry. No movies are coming out. It's crazy.
I was actually just gonna say that. I mean, the movie industry got totally put on hold. So it's. I think that it's gonna be a game changer. I think that now you're going to see a lot more, like when it comes to movies, there's going to be a lot more films that are just going streaming or like Netflix or like things like that. You're going to see less and less Hollywood movies in the theater. I have a feeling.
Yeah, look at Hamilton. Hamilton was filmed to be in the movie, and Disney just put it on the network.
And it went crazy in one day.
And what could do? They had record download in 3 days. They had close to 1 million downloads.
Wow!
They had 400,000 in America, and then they had 72,000 in Europe. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's a big hit. That thing, Hamilton.
Yeah, there was another movie that it was supposed to be. It was called Anthem 5. Was supposed to go to the movie theater, and because of this whole thing, went straight to Disney Plus.
Wow! So what do we got coming up, Mr. Rossi? We got Sweet. Right,
we got Sweet, Slade, Gary Glitter,
yep,
and the making of the Beatles Revolver for September, man.
Yeah. So that's going to be good, and I'm going to be coming up in the next few days for maybe October and November, and we should maybe in December at some point have like that 100 show. We're going to do something special for that, and then obviously a Christmas show again.
Yeah.
Then it'll be the end of another year, man.
Hey, you want to hear to everybody, this is upon Labor Day weekend. It's the following week, I think, right?
Yeah, end of August this will be on.
So this is pretty much get ready for Labor Day next week. Everybody enjoy the Labor Day. And Mike, where can we reach you for any questions and answer? And we also do the once a month chatter group that we talk about bands and music. If anybody want to join us.
Yeah, where you can find that is the Rockshow podcast group page on Facebook. I'm very active on that. I put a lot of music up every day, little stories, a little information about bands and stuff and upcoming podcasts. Of course, you can get the podcast on that group page. So check it out on Facebook, the Rockshow podcast group page. Also, you can find me on Facebook under my regular name, which is Michael Baker. You can also find me on Instagram, RockerMike212, RockerMike212. You can find me on Twitter, RockerMike3. And I'm always online doing something.
Yeah, he's and you seen that article I put about Cream that I put on the thing?
Yes.
What do you think of that?
Interesting. Very interesting.
Interesting. I read it. I was like, oh, these guys are going to love that. Another thing, guys, we got the Rock Show T-shirts. If you want to support the show, get a T-shirt at Wrestling Tees, ProWrestlingTee.com/Getting Lumped Up for $19.99. You can look as good as me and Rocker Mike look.
I hope you look better than me and you.
They did better because don't they have a problem? And if you guys want to reach me, you can get me on the Rock Show group page on Facebook. You can get me on Instagram, Twitter, and what the hell's the other one? Instagram, and just
anything getting lumped up.
Anything getting lumped up, you can find me. Also, go to the website, check it out. We have a lot of. I just revamped the website. There's a lot of good shit on there.
GettingLumpedUp.com.
Hmm?
GettingLumpedUp.com.
GettingLumpedUp.com. And again, people, thank you for the love and support you guys are showing us. Because Rocker Mike works hard at getting some of this information. I do the research also, and I bring up some question. But guys, thank you for making us the number 2 rock show in America.
Yeah, definitely is. Definitely is.
Why be number 1 when you can be number 2?
Well, hey, number 2 is okay.
Yeah.
All right. So thanks, everybody. And remember, what do we always say?
Don't get drunk. Get lumped up. Have a good one, guys.
Bye.